All right, guys, so what we're looking at today is determinant. So we're taking the determinant of a matrix. Now, what this means is we're finding the value of the second order determinant is the difference of the product of the two diagonals. Or really, whenever we take the determinant of a matrix, so a 2 by 2, we take the diagonals. A times D minus B times C. So for this here, it'd be 4 times 6. 4 times 6 minus 5 times negative 3. So when we are going from left to right, the diagonals going left to right will be our positive, and right to left will be our subtraction, what we subtracted. And that's it. So that's what we do to find the determinant. So when we look at this here, if I want to find the determinant, well, we're going to do 5 times 9 minus negative 4 times 8. So when we do the determinant, we do our diagonals. So we'd have 5 times 9 minus negative 4 times 8. Well, 5 times 9 would be 45. Minus, well, negative 4 times 8 would be negative 32. Well, here a negative and a negative will make a positive, and 45 plus 32 will be 77. And that's it. That's all we have to do to find the determinants. We're just doing our diagonals. So we'll do it again. So we'll do it on this one here. So when we find the determinant, add these two together, and subtract them from these two here. So the first one we have going from left to right would be 0 times 11 minus 6 times 4. And now we just need to simplify. Well, 0 times 11 is going to be 0 minus 6 times 4 will be 24. Well, 0 minus 24 will be negative 24. And that's it. That's all we have to do to find these determinants, our diagonals. So we'll do 2 more here. So our first diagonal is going to be 6 times 8. And the other diagonal that we're going to have is going to be negative 7 times 10. So what we're going to do first is negative 6 times 8 minus negative 7 times 10. Well, negative 6 times 8 will be negative 48. So we can go on and do this here. Well, negative and negative would make a positive. 7 times 10, which would be 70. And lastly, we would combine these two together. So negative 48 plus 70 would be 22. And that's all we have to do for this here. Now, we could have typed this into the calculator. We can type these into the TI-84 graphing calculator, and it would give us the same answer. It would give us the exact same answer. Let's do one more just so we get it down. So we would do our diagonal and our other diagonal. So the diagonal is going from left to right, so it would be 7 times 4, or negative 4, minus 5 times 9. Well, 7 times negative 4 will be negative 28. Negative 5 times 9 would be negative 45. And negative 28 minus 45 will give us a negative 73. And that's all we have to do for this here. And that's all we have to do for these 2 by 2 determinants. So a 2 by 2 determinant is just going to be this here. Diagonal one way minus diagonals going the other direction. And that's it. Now we could have also used the graphing calculator, and I included 2 videos with that there, which will do these also. Now we also have determinants for a 3 by 3, and really if we take a determinant, it has to be a square matrix. If it's not a square matrix, we're not able to take the determinant. Now there are a bunch of steps here that we can do. First, rewrite the first two columns in the determinant, and then go from there, and that's what I do. So what we want to do first is we want to rewrite the first two columns. So we'll have A, B, D, E, G, H. So we rewrite the first two columns over here to the left. So I went on and just took a picture of them, so we write them over here to the left. Or to the right, sorry. We write them to the right. Now we do our diagonals, just like we did with the 2 by 2, but this time we're going to have a few more. We're going to have a few more this time. So our first diagonal is going to be these three here. Because it's a 3 by 3, we're going to have three diagonals going in one direction. And then we're going to have three diagonals going in the other direction. And our diagonals that are going from left to right, the ones in black, are going to add together. So we'll take those and add those together and subtract them from the ones going from right to left. So it's almost the same as what we did for the 2 by 2, but this time we have more of them. And so this will make a little more sense as we look at an actual problem. So we'll look at this one here. Okay, so I copied the matrix down. So again, we're going to evaluate this determinant using diagonals. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to rewrite the first two columns over on the right hand side of the matrix. Is what we do first. Now we're going to take our diagonals going this direction here. These here. Now our first diagonal, I'm going to do each one of these individually, are going to be this here. So it'd be 4 times 2 times 9 will be our first diagonal. Our second diagonal would be -8 times 6 times -4. And our third diagonal will be 3 times -3 times 5. And that's all the diagonals that we can have going from right to left. Because if we go any further, we won't have three numbers, and we need 3. Now we can go on and evaluate these here before we move on to the next set. Well, 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 9 is 72. Now our next one is going to be -8 times 6 times -4. And if we multiply all three of these here together, we multiply all three of these together, we will get 192. And lastly, we have 3 times 3 times 5, and if we do that, we will get -45. So these three here are our three diagonals going from left to right, our positive diagonals. Now we need our other diagonals going in the other direction. So I'm going to remove these diagonal lines so it's a little bit easier to see. Because now we're going to have them going in the other direction. So now we're going to be starting, we'll have these three here, these three diagonals. So our diagonals going in the other direction. I'll just type them in this color here. So our first one is going to be -8 times -3 times 9. Our next one is going to be 4 times 6 times 5. And our last one is going to be 3 times 2 times -4. And again, just like with the first one, we just need to simplify these here. So we would do -8 times -3 times 9, which would be 216. Our next one would be 4 times 5 times 6, which would give us 120. And lastly, 3 times 2 times -4 will give us -24. Now these here are our two sets of diagonals. So the ones that would be considered our positive, 72, 192, and -45. And the ones we're going to subtract from it are the ones here in orange. So what we need to do next is we just need to add these diagonals up because they go together. 72, 192, and -45, they will all combine. So if I add all of those together, 2, 2, and 5, 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 5 gives me 9. Well, this is -45. So really we're going to do, let me rewrite this out, because it'd be 72 plus 192 minus 45 is what we're saying here. And this here, again, we don't have to do this by hand if we don't want to. So we can do 72 plus 192 minus 45. And if we do this here, we get 219. Now for our other set, we're going to do 216 plus 120 minus 24. And again, we can put this all in the calculator. We don't have to do this by hand. We get 312. So we're almost done. So this here, so all the stuff in black, all these black numbers, we did these here, so we actually don't need that, are the ones going from left to right, our diagonals going from left to right. Now, all the ones in orange are the ones going from right to left. And we got these two numbers here, 219 and 312. So the last thing we need to do is we are actually going to take 219 minus 312 to get our answer. And 219 minus 312 will give us a -93. So the determinant of this 3 by 3 is the number -93. And that's all we need to do for this here. And that's it. So we'll do one more together. And again, there is a video for doing this on the graphing calculator, so you don't have to do these by hand if you don't want to. But this is how we do it by hand. And I'm going to show you one more time. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy those first two columns over. Now I'm going to use this here to copy them over right here so that I can kind of see how this looks with our diagonals. Now our set of diagonals are going to be these three here. So the first diagonal is going to be -5 times -1 times 2. Our second diagonal is going to be 9 times 5 times -4. And our last diagonal is going to be 4 times -2 times 6. And we can go on and simplify these here, multiply these out. Well, -5 times -1 times 2 would give me +10. 9 times 5 will be 45, and 45 times -4 will be -180. And 4 times -2 will be -8, and -8 times 6 will be -48. And that's it for our first set of diagonals. Now we're going to do the diagonals going in the opposite direction, from right to left. So we'll have these three diagonals here. Now our first set of diagonals are going to be 9 times -2 times 2. Our second set will be -5 times 5 times 6. And our last set will be 4 times -1 times -4. And again, just like with the first one, we can multiply these together. So 9 times -2 times 2 is going to be -36. -5 times 5 is going to be 25 times 6, which will give us 150. And our last one, 4 times -1 times -4 will give us 6. So we get these two sets here. Now all we need to do is add them together. So for these three right here, we would add these together. So we would do -36 plus 150 plus 16. And if we add these together, we will get 130. And then we can do the same for these three over here. So 10 minus 180 minus 48. And if we do this here, we will get -218. Now the last thing we need to do is take these two here. So we have our -2. So we'll have our -218 minus our 130. So the right, from the left to right, goes first, minus the one going from right to left. And if we take these here, if we go -218 minus 130, it will give us -348. So the determinant for this here is -348. And that's all we have to do for this here. So our diagonals going from left to right, add those together and subtract from it the diagonals going from right to left. And that's it for this here. So your homework assignment is going to be on page 225, problems 1 through 8 all. And that's all we have to do for this here. And I will see you guys tomorrow.